and welcome to episode 37 of Thought Bubbles, sparkling insights into community engagement, coming to you from my office in McLaren Vale, which is about 45 minutes south of Adelaide in South Australia. And I want to share something with you today about a conversation that was had yesterday in a private Facebook group. If you've been following me online or following any of my work in any way recently, you'll have heard about Engage to Act, which is a collective of individuals who are committed to progressing best practice community engagement. And we have, as part of our collective, we have a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group and a Twitter profile and all sorts. The Facebook group is a closed group that people apply to join, and it's really a safe space, if you like, for professionals or people with an interest in community engagement to share information and post things. And anyway, yesterday I posted something, and I'm so excited by the energy that it created within that group that I want to share what was discussed. And obviously I can share it here anonymously without mentioning names of who said what. But the story goes, now I've got a lot of printouts here because there was a lot of discussion, so forgive me for doing a bit of reading in today's Thought Bubbles, but I want to share this with you. So let me just read what I wrote, and I'll tell you a bit about it as I go. I'm needing some love from my fellow like-minded community engagement people. I've just been talking to a friend on the phone who doesn't work in our field. He works in what you'd call the other end of the spectrum, in the finance world. Now, I'm hoping to also share this with said friend in the finance world because I love this discussion. He would call our end fluffy, or in fact he did call our end fluffy, and his end tangible. He's financy, we're engaging, poles apart, it would seem. He believes that our world of community engagement is pretty much a waste of space, and in his words, a waste of taxpayer money. In friendly banter, I responded with, so you're saying that my entire community engagement career for the last 18 years has been a waste of time? At which point, as friends do, we decided to just agree to disagree. I thought I'd share it in this Facebook group, I said, A, for some warm fuzzy hugs from my warm fuzzy friends and colleagues, B, to see how my peers in the community engagement world respond to comments like this, because we get it all the time, and see whether we should be attempting to make the community engagement sector more tangible and less fluffy, and if so, how do we do that? So, some of the responses, I love them. I felt the love, and I know my friend in the finance world will be very open to the banter that people gave. Somebody said, the quote I love about community-orientated work that you might like to remind him of is, we keep the back streets quiet so that the front streets can be profitable. He said he can't remember who said that. Somebody else said, I think it's partly a matter of flipping the focus and pointing out that their hard-ass approach to life is getting us nowhere. It just leads to social isolation, community breakdown, etc., etc. So how would they fix it? And yes, use the word hard-ass. Interesting. Somebody said, I once tweeted that working with finance is like trying to get blood out of a stone, and it ended up with me getting a written warning. I feel your pain. Note, I'm also married to an accountant who, after showing her some videos explaining participatory budgeting, she got a frosty reception. She gave a frosty reception. And he said, actually, I think they're just jealous that we get to go outside and do all these fun things on social media. Somebody else said, it's easier to just let them think that. Find your people, and that's exactly what I did. These are my people here, and I'll come to that in a bit. They value your soft stuff, and they know that it's hard. Or you could always say, that's an interesting perspective. Luckily, it's not your democracy, it's ours. Or would you prefer to live in a dictatorship? And then she said some nice things to me, which was really good. Somebody else said, working in the ICT development space, I can tell you that a product never gets used because you didn't bother to engage with your community of potential users is a much bigger waste of money than what is spent on community engagement. He says the same principle applies to so many areas, but it's one that I like to think about. And I really like that yeah, even in the private sector, you're going to launch a new product in a piece of software. You're going to test it with people. You're going to find out if it's what they want. You're going to talk to them about it, get your feedback, get them involved. So it does happen in the private sector, and it's not seen as soft and fluffy. Somebody said, it sounds like you need a professional healing circle. I think that's what Engage to Act is for me. Let's face it, the poor fellow, if you're watching this, the poor fellow is living in dinosaur land. To be bantering is to be competing, which is the opposite of collaborating. She gave me a link to a really interesting article. Oh, let me just tell you what the article's called. The Day the Banking Industry Died. I hope you're all still watching this. Somebody said, I'm pleased to see, and I've been sort of saying he and she, but somebody said, I'm pleased to see so many responses are for men on this discussion. I always thought there was an undercurrent of gender to this issue, which then opened up this whole conversation about, do males and females approach community engagement differently? The community engagement world often is top heavy with females, and there was some discussion around personality types, and actually that we can just accept that where was it? That, you know, in terms of personality attributes, when you rank thinkers and feelers, there's more men in thinking roles and women in feeling roles, and that's fine. That's something that perhaps is just there as a gender thing. Anyway, we talked about maybe that could be a conversation at our own conference to talk about male and female approaches to engagement. Is there a difference? Somebody else suggested respond with some financial examples. Show how not engaging has saved project dollars. I think probably how engaging has saved project dollars, I would have thought. Now, and I mentioned there was that quote I did recently from the Next Generation project all around infrastructure, and I think it was something like $10 billion worth of infrastructure projects have been shelved because of community outrage or communities not being engaged well. So yeah, that's a good idea. And then there were some discussions around, we'll just mention the East-West Link in Victoria, or the Skyrail in Melbourne, and I mentioned all the St Kilda Triangle, which is well known to have cost a lot of money through some poor engagement early on. Somebody else said, how am I going for time? 6 minutes. I hope you're still with me. Somebody said, hey Becky, this is one that has come up for me so many times in local government, being called soft or fluffy. It's usually by somebody in finance or regulatory part of the business. I generally remind them that they actually work at the easy end of the business, where the 2 and 2 always equals 4, and laws are fairly black and white. Whereas in community development or community engagement, we're constantly wondering with the most complex. We're constantly wondering with the most complex creatures on the planet, and often with the most complex issues these complex creatures face. To me, it's very clear who's actually shallowing in who's paddling in the shallow end of the pool. Somebody else said, it's soft and fluffy. I'd really love to see them out there having the hard conversations on domestic violence policy. Nothing soft and fluffy about that. It wasn't me having them either, but some engagement person did, and that would have been as hard as it comes. It makes a difference, damn it. Yes, I had a bad day, this person said. Somebody also said, first, here's a hug, and you're right. It's easy to stay in the echo chamber. So I talked about how we actually do need to expose ourselves to opposite ends of our beliefs. The community engagement approach is a belief. You know, we believe this is important to engage people in decision making and get them involved in problem solving. And it's very important that we open ourselves up to people who aren't believers of that, because it challenges us and it helps us evaluate ourselves as professionals. Working as a consumer engagement advocate within health services, most conversations seem like battles, but understanding their logic position helps me design approaches that work. I think of it as dancing with an unpleasant partner. I might not like the company, but hey, we're still dancing. Couple more to share with you. 8 minutes. Longest thought bubbles ever, almost. Oh, please. We all know early and well-executed engagement leads to improved timeframes and reduces costs. When it comes to us justifying this, we don't need our profession is in demand. We can just show that our profession is in demand and growing for those reasons. We simply must grow and mature with it. Presumably your friend would have some views about the market and how tangible and real that is, when most of us would debate its legitimacy and practicality in delivering equitable and socially responsible results. Somebody said, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm afraid this isn't a new question. I've recently had somebody say the same to me. So firstly, here's a bunch of hugs. See, we are kind of warm and fluffy and I love it. I'm very keen to see our field recognised as legitimate. Me too. And it's potentially organisations like Engage to Act promoting the profession and potentially constructing an accreditation process. One suggestion would be to look at the Partnership Broker Association, which sounds amazing, and let's think about that as a sector. And I then received a suggestion from a colleague on the Engage to Act board that perhaps we get my friend in finance to do a guest blog for us on the Engage to Act website to share his views, because I think that everybody's entitled to views. Somebody said, talk to people who've worked in infrastructure. Our whole purpose is meant to be community engagement, and yet we spend at least 50% of our time trying to persuade project managers and engineers why this is essential. Funny thing is, it's not rocket science. Try working backwards when you explain it. You know, what would your project world outcome or organisation look like without engagement? And I think this is all coming to the question of how do we measure engagement? How do we prove that we're actually making a difference in tangible ways? And that is really my friend in finance, sorry, I'm not saying his name, but my friend in finance has raised such a good point that, we are seen as soft and fluffy because perhaps we can't easily, tangibly talk about our outcomes. But we can, if we're not involved, we can demonstrate what went wrong, perhaps. Somebody said, I can see an Engage to Act event or paper coming out of this. Yes, most definitely. And talking again about, how did you successfully argue for more resources from engagement people? People could be sharing how they've managed to do this. So that was the conversation. That's our thoughts on the soft and fluffy end of the spectrum, the world of community engagement and collaboration and working together to solve problems, fixing things. I hope you've enjoyed this. I wanted to share that with you. I reckon watch this space because, as you can probably tell, I'm quite fired up and I love this, and I think we're growing as a sector, and I am personally very passionate to lead that space and bring us all on this journey of all of these different things that we need to do in the sector, but particularly perhaps making ourselves more tangible. But for now, I'll send you some warm and fluffy hugs and a whole lot of softness. I'll see you next time.